Hi everyone, so welcome to the class. So today I will be going through the corrections for the previous test, so your online test, the revision test one. Okay, so if you could please take out your paper that I asked you to print. So I believe that I've given everyone the punya response paper. So and actually I asked you guys to print it. So if you could take that one out, it would be very helpful. And so you can compare with your answers with what my answers would be. Okay. But first, you need to bear in mind that this paper, the ones that I'm going to do, the answers together, is you know what the answers are. Okay. I've already told you the responses. It was immediately shown to you. Okay. But my answers here, it would be it would be from how I would answer it. Okay, so it's not 100% perfect with the marking scheme. Okay, so I'm not gonna follow through the marking scheme 100%, but it would be how I will answer and how it actually leads to the same kind of answers as well. Okay, so you need to bear that in mind when you are answering, because when you are answering, okay, the first thing that you need to make sure is, of course, you need to understand the question. And when you understand the question based on your understanding, and then you would answer the question based, you would structure your answers based on the questions, how you would actually answer it. Kalau misalnya kamu ingati dari marking scheme, I would know it straight away. Okay, I can tell, right? Because previously I have seen there were a few of you who I have suspicions that you might be looking at the marking scheme because the answers, susunannya, the pointsnya are exactly what the marking scheme give. Okay, and it's spot on, right? So which is good if you guys do it on your own. Okay, it's brilliant. But if you do it with the help of marking scheme, okay, then bear in mind that the reasons why I'm doing this is because to help you guys to prepare for your own level. Okay, so you need to help yourself, okay, by being truthful, right? If you're just doing it for the sake of avoiding me, um, you know, reprimanding you to do more revisions, or simply because you want to get good marks for this test, it's not going to be useful for you. Okay, so that's what I'm going to say now, because that's what I have observed. Okay, so again, so let's just jump straight to it. Okay, so I'm going to switch the camera now. It would be this one. Okay, so you should have this with you, right? And let's just, yeah, just bear with me for a second. Okay, right. So, okay, so this is the paper that I've given you. Okay, let's just jump straight to the first questions. Okay, so it says here, so you have this figure given to you. Okay, so it's obviously showing you it's kind of like a type of a food chain. Okay, so you have a food factory, waste mercury compounds from factory, and then you have the sea plants and animals, small plants and animals, small fish, large fish, fishermen and their families. So this is actually showing you the kira macam how the flow of substances. Okay, so it's from the mercury. They put the waste mercury compounds from the factory into the sea, and then it will be absorbed by and then it will transfer to small plants and animals, transferred to small fish, large fish, and eventually to the fishermen. Okay, so if it shows in 1951, some compounds of mercury entered and passed along the food chain. Okay, name a producer in figure 1.1. So if you could underline the word producer, okay, and when you come across the word producer, so immediately your first thing that you should come into your mind is plants, Okay, so producer is essentially any organism which can make their own food. Okay, so in simple words, producer is any organism which can make their own food. Okay, and you should know by now that this should be the best example that we should know is plants. Okay, and factory. Okay, I saw some of you put your answers producer is factory. Okay, no, factory is not a producer because it is not an organism. Okay, how come factory any organism which can make their own food? Okay, bukannya ia tanya producer of the waste. Okay, ini it's about food chain. So when you talk about a food chain, whenever we talk about producer in a food chain, there will be organisms that can make their own food. Okay, so if your answer is factory, of course, obviously it's wrong. Okay, and if your answer is C, okay, yes, the C might have some producer inside it, okay, but the C itself, the C simply means the water. How can water be a producer? Because water is not an organism, okay, the C itself is not an organism, right? And the next thing though, the next thing on the line is actually small plants and animals, right? So now, by the way, let me just, okay, right? So it says there that it is small plants and animals. Now, some of you even answered, your answer producer, small plants and animals, okay? Now, my question to you is, animals, can they make their own food? Okay, cannot, right? Kalau animals, they cannot make their own food. Okay, mana ada animals yang boleh apa tu membuat makanan sendiri? Okay, unless the animals itu ia ada chlorophyll. Okay, right? But in this case, the obvious one here is which one is the producer in this food chain is essentially the small plants. So name of a producer, the producer is plants ataupun small plants. Okay, right. If you want to be a bit more specific, okay, if you have advanced knowledge, okay, if you have advanced knowledge, kan ni ia cakap C, and then other small plants and animals. Maybe perhaps you remember from somewhere that example of small animals that can apa tu, that can make their own food. You could probably think in terms of phytoplankton. Okay, kalau plankton, you know, yang plankton yang ada SpongeBob. Okay, so that one could be here. Okay, or it could be algae. Right? So these, okay, plankton ataupun, oh by the way, plankton or phytoplankton. Okay, remember, producer in a food chain. Whenever we talk about producer in a food chain, we're talking about organisms that can make their own food. Okay, factory, you know, yes, factory makes something, they produce something, but they are not producer in the food chain. Okay, they cannot make their own food. But factory is not a living organism. The same thing with sea. Okay, sea, we talk about sea itself. Okay, it's just water. How can water be considered as organism? Right? And again, animals, no, animals is not a producer. They cannot make their own food. They need to eat. That's why the answer is plants. Okay. Now, next question. This one. Okay, right. Table 1.2 shows the concentration of mercury in parts per billion in unpolluted seawater, in polluted seawater, in the flesh of the small fish, and in the flesh of large fish. Okay, so this is ani ara unpolluted. Polluted 2.0. In the flesh of small fish, maksudnya in the body of small fish, 200. In the body of large fish, 20,000. Okay, now the question is asking, calculate how many times more concentrated the mercury is in the polluted seawater than in the unpolluted seawater. So this is essentially simple maths. Okay, so if you have trouble with this, I don't know whether you have trouble with your maths or whether you have troubles with your English. Okay, it's simply asking you, bertanya, how many times more concentrated the mercury is in the polluted seawater than in the unpolluted seawater. So you have here unpolluted seawater is 0.1. So unpolluted is 0.1. Okay, and then the polluted is 2.0. It's asking how many times more. So if you want to know how many times more, what do? Is simply you divide polluted divide by unpolluted. Okay, so you have 2.0 divided by 0.1, right? Which should give you, so you have 2.0 divided by 0.1, you have 20. So 20 times more. Okay, if your answer is 20, I will accept. If your answer is 20 times more, I will accept. Okay, but this is the way to do it. Okay, now next question. Right, it says that based on figure 1.1 and table 1.2. So if you look from this, okay, we studied this. We know
it's 2 o'clock.
The factory, it has waste mercury poured into the seawater, which is then transferred to small plants and animals, and then transferred to small fish, and then large fish, and finally to the fishermen. Okay, and you know about this: the unpolluted seawater, the polluted seawater, the flesh of path per billions. Okay, so how much is present in the small fish? How much is present in the large fish? The mercury in the small fish, mercury in large fish. Okay, so it's asking you, based on figure 1.1 and table 1.2, explain why the concentration of mercury changes with each successive member of the food chain. Kenapa, okay, why, kenapa the concentration of mercury, kenapa merkurinya bertukar with each successive member of the food chain. Kenapa merkurinya tu bertukar as you go from one food chain to the next. So as they go from here to here to here to here, kenapa ya bertukar cakapnya? That's the question is. Okay, so it's asking why, right? So firstly, you need to identify first what happens to the mercury levels. Okay, so first, okay, so what my answer would be, first, I would tell what happens as they go successively to the next food chain. So I will tell that as it goes from one food chain to the next, from one organism in the food chain to the next trophic level organism, okay, so as it goes from the organism of one, from the one organism to another organism, what will happen is actually the mercury path per billion actually increase, right? So that's your first point. Okay, now we want to know why. Kenapa ia increasing? So if we look here, the waste mercury, it was poured into the seawater, and then it goes to small plants and animals, goes to small fish, large fish, and fishermen. And also backed up from here, the polluted, and then the small fish, and then the large fish. So you can see how it actually increases. Okay, so why? So we first start with the small plants and animals. So what does the small plants, the animals do? They actually absorb the mercury from the seawater. So your first point and your second point is mercury absorbed by small plants and animals. Okay. And then sudah ia kena absorbed by the small plants and animals. So what's next? Sudah ia kena absorbed by the small plants and animals. Then the small plants and animals are then eaten by the small fish. Okay. So, and as you can see, the small fish, they don't eat the mercury directly. They eat the small plants and fish. So the small plants and fish, small plants and fish eaten by small fish, small plants and animals, sorry, eaten by small fish, which is then eaten by large fish. Okay, so first you recognize mercury-nya increasing as you go to from one trophic level to the next, and then you recognize the mercury being absorbed by the small plants, and then the small plants and it gets eaten by the small fish, and then the small fish will then get eaten by the large fish. Now, why is it increasing? Because the mercury, what will happen is the mercury, kenapa ia gets a lot get transferred to the small fish and a lot gets transferred to the large fish, because the mercury cannot be broken down. Or digested by the organisms. Okay, so they cannot be broken down or digested by the organisms. So what happened is, instead of being broken down, instead of being digested, the mercury is simply stored. Is stored in the body. Okay, so they cannot be broken down, they cannot be digested, or they cannot be even excreted. Okay, dorang dia boleh kena broken down, dia boleh kena digest, dia boleh kena excreted in the organisms. So that's why the mercury is just being stored in the body. So if they get transferred, so which means the mercury gets eaten along the way anyway. Okay, so this is the reasons why, explaining why the mercury changes with each successive member. So mercury increases. Why? Because mercury absorbed and then eaten by small fish, and then eaten by large fish. And then mercury cannot be broken down or excreted. Therefore, the mercury is stored in the body, or it remains in the body. Okay, and as you know, as we discussed before, when macam misalnya the small fish eats, they don't just eat one saja, they probably eat 10 or 15 more. Okay, so 10 or 15 more, and then are transferred to small fish, and then the small fish is eaten lagi by the large fish. Okay, and this is actually example. Okay, this, if you recall from your notes or from your textbook, this is actually example of bioaccumulation. Okay, right, so this is the answer. Now again, okay, based on figure 1.1 and table 1.2 as well, suggests why many of the fishermen and their families suffered from mental illness. And this is 2 marks, okay? Now, kenapa fishermennya suffered from mental illness? Because as you can see, okay, as you can see from here, the large fish, the fishermen and their families eats large fish, okay? And the large fish is eating small fish, and the small fish is eating the small plants, and the small plants is eating the mercury. So as we discussed before, the mercury in it is actually get transferred and transferred and transferred and transferred. Okay, so why do they suffer from mental illness? So it's possible that because they suffered from mental illness, because mercury is a toxic substance to brain or nervous system. Okay, so mercury is a toxic substance to brain or nervous system. And how do they get the mercury from? Because the mercury is from dorang punya diet, large fish. Okay, large fish contains mercury kan? Large fish ada mercury, and large fish ni the siapa makan? The fishermen makan. So that's why the fishermen suffered from mental illness, because mercury is a toxic substance, and mercury in large fish is transferred to fishermen and his family when they eat the large fish. Okay, so this is the reason. This is how I would answer. Now, moving on to the next question. Okay, so next question is to do with this. Okay, so you have this experimental setup. Okay, as I mentioned to you before, if you get this type of investigations, okay, you need to understand what the diagram is showing you first. Okay, what topic is it related to? Okay, so here you have a leafy shoot, you have rubber tube connections, you have a capillary tube, you have air bubble, and you have water. Okay, and you have a black polythene cover. So immediately, what my thought is, you have plants. Okay, so this is the leafy shoot plants. Okay, and it was being cut at its end. So as you can see here, the plants is kena potong, and it's kena sambung dengan capillary tube, right? The capillary tube, and inside the capillary tube, ia ada air bubbles-nya. Okay, so it will be filled here with water, sini water, water, and water. Okay, so you have water here, ada air bubble here, you have water here, which is connected to the beaker of water, right? So immediately what I would be thinking is, the plants, what they will do, they will photosynthesize, and they will also do transpiration. Okay, and among these two, which one, this is what my thinking, the first thinking should be, okay, is plant, rubber tube connection, the capillary tube, air bubbles, water, perhaps to do with photosynthesis and transpiration, okay, and it must be to do with the water here. Oh, okay, you might be thinking of photosynthesis needs water, okay, and kalau transpiration is the process of losing water from leaves. Okay, so if the plant is photosynthesizing, so immediately I could think, oh, okay, photosynthesis, it needs water kan, so artinya water yang from sini ni, from below them, it would get absorbed up. Okay, the same thing with transpiration as well. If transpiration is occurring, then what it's to do is losing water vapor from leaf. So water vapor is losing. So if water vapor is losing, they need to be replaced. So what will happen here? What will happen to the water under here? It will be up as well. So if this is going up, what happens to the air bubble? Then you might immediately think, oh, okay, the air bubble might be going up. Okay, so this is kira my first thinking baru. Okay, I haven't even looked at the questions yet. Okay, so this is what you should have in your mind first. Okay, maybe you don't think a lot to this extent, but at least you have this: plant, photosynthesis, transpiration. Photosynthesis needs water. Transpiration use water. Why do I relate to water? Because I can see water is being used here. Okay, now look at the question. Okay, it says there, figure 2.1 shows an experiment on the uptake of water by a leafy shoot placed in a light breezy environment. So they are placed in a light breezy environment. So in a light breezy environment, so in other words, is ada light lah. Okay, so light present. Okay, and it's breezy. So breezy means it's windy. Okay, so again, this gives me clue. Kalau light, okay, kalau light, immediately what I would be thinking, oh, okay, light, again, photosynthesis. Okay, and windy, okay, windy to do with plants, oh, okay, and then straight away I will relate, oh, okay, transpiration. Okay, because factors affecting the rate of transpiration is wind, okay, air movement. Now, explain what is likely to happen to the air bubble in the capillary tube. So what do you think might happen to the air bubble here? Okay, so this one, I've actually thought about it a while sudah, because what I have seen is right. So I have plants here, they have water underneath, right? And when the plants, you provide with water, you know immediately they would do photosynthesis, or they would do transpiration, okay? Or they would do both, actually, okay? If the conditions are met, right? So photosynthesis, why? They need water. Transpiration, they keep losing water, right? Because the stomata is open during the day, right? Kalau ada light, stomata is open, so they keep losing water. So if they need the water, they keep losing the water. So water from inside the plant, they will need to be replaced. And macam mana you kena replace? Of course, from the water underneath it. Okay, and if the water is being drawn up, the air bubble will also follow up. They will follow up. They will follow up. To follow up. Okay, simply because the water above is being used up, so the air bubbles is gonna get dragged along. Okay, the air bubbles gonna drag along. By the way, I saw a lot of your answers. You're saying that the air bubbles ani yang kena absorb, air bubbles yang kena pakai. No, it's not the air bubbles yang kena absorb. They don't need air. They don't absorb air. Dorang ambil udara daripada roots. They never take air from the roots. Okay, they take water from the roots. And it's just the air, they're moving up. It's simply because the water, they get dragged along. Okay, so merakat ba. Okay, so the air bubble is not, it's not that they use the air bubble. Okay, it's because the water above the air bubble is being used, so the air bubble gets dragged up along. Right, so explain what is likely to happen to the air bubble in the capillary tube. So the air bubble will actually goes up. So air bubble move up or gets dragged up the capillary tube. Okay, so that is what is likely to happen. Okay, and then why? Kenapa ia kena drag up? Because the plant might do photosynthesis and transpiration, because the plants need water, absorb water for photosynthesis, and the plants also lose water through transpiration from the leaves. So therefore, they need to replace the water. So that's why they need to absorb and they get along. Air bubble move up, gets dragged up the capillary tube as water. Okay, kenapa ia kena drag up? As water above the air bubble is being absorbed by the leafy shoot, the plant. Okay, so the keyword here is air bubble, they move up. Sini apa keywordsnya? Because the air bubble, the water is being absorbed by the plant. And apa lagi, water tu used untuk apa? Water used by plant for photosynthesis and to replace water loss through transpiration. Okay, so this is what my answer would look like. Okay. Now, moving on. Okay, the next question. It says, the black polythene cover is then placed over the plant. State the effects this is likely to have on what happens to the bubble. Okay, so earlier, we placed this in a light, ada cahaya matahari, and breezy environment. Okay, now what we have, we put this cover. So as you can see, the cover is quite long. It's black and it's quite long. So if you put it over, what will happen is actually it covers sitting the plants as well. Okay, and when it actually covers the sitting plants of the plant, as sitting, yeah, what happened is the black polythene cover, it blocks sunlight. Okay, sudah tak ia blocking sunlight, and here kan nanti cakap awal-awal dia cakap pasal breezy environment to do with transpiration. Now, if you block it with the container, with the cover, can the wind go in? No. Okay, so it doesn't just block sunlight, it will also block wind. Okay, so this is what the black polythene cover is doing. And the thing is, when you block sunlight, when you block wind, that means can photosynthesis happen? No. So no photosynthesis. So kalau no photosynthesis, that means no absorption of water. And if there is no absorption of water, can the bubble go up lagi? No. Okay, so it may go up, but very slowly. Bubble go up slowly or stop. Same thing with wind as well. Kalau no wind, that means no transpiration. Ada transpiration, tapi reduced transpiration, less transpiration. Macam mana boleh less transpiration? Because the water vapor yang sepatutnya keluar, they now get accumulated near the leaves. So less transpiration. Why? Water vapor accumulate near stomata of leaf. And if it accumulates in the stomata of the leaf, so it will actually reduce the difference in concentration gradient. Okay, So Anna, let me just do it properly. So the black polythene cover placed over the plant, okay, state the likely effect it has on what happens to the bubble. So what does it do? The black polythene, it will then block sunlight. Kalau ia block sunlight, artinya no photosynthesis. Kalau no photosynthesis, artinya less water absorbed or uptake from roots. And if there is less water being absorbed or uptake from the roots, then what will it result in? It will actually result in slowing down of bubble. Okay, and also what else? Reasons, yeah. Okay, it doesn't just block sunlight, it will also block wind. So kalau no wind, artinya less transpiration. How come less transpiration? It's simply because the wind do not disperse water vapor near stomata of leaf. So as a result, water vapor accumulate near leaf, which resulted in reduced difference in concentration gradient, which resulted in less transpiration. Okay, so what happened if you have the black polythene cover, as I mentioned here, this you put it on top, it actually, what does it do? It blocks sunlight and it blocks wind. So what does blocking sunlight do? If you block the sunlight, which means no photosynthesis, also means kalau no photosynthesis, less water being absorbed. So it slows down the rate of bubble going up. Okay, and if you block the wind as well, if you block the wind do not disperse the water vapor near the stomata of leaf, and then water vapor accumulate near the leaf, reduce difference in concentration gradient, reduce transpiration. And of course, kalau reduce transpiration, it will therefore slow down or stop bubble. Okay. Explain your answer to be, or actually, I've done it here. Okay, so I need, state the effect of this likely to have on what happens to the bubble. So you can say apa efeknya, the bubble slow down and stop. That's the 2 points here. So they will slow down eventually and come to a stop. So that's the 2 points here. Explanation, Nina, all these things here. Okay, so I've done it way early. Okay, kalau ini state, they slow down the bubble going up and eventually it will stop the bubble. That is the state-nya. Kalau explanation-nya, the things that we have done here. Right, next question. Okay, next question. You have this diagram here. So this is showing you you have your scapula, you have your humerus, you have your radius, you have your ulna, bicep, tricep. Okay, so you should be able to identify all of this, right? If you have trouble with this, if you're wrong, then I would advise you to simply just go back to your notes and read. Okay, it simply means that you're not reading enough. Okay, if you get this wrong. So here, a diagram of not if of some of the muscles and bones in the arm and the shoulder. Name the type of joint at the elbow. So at the elbow is here. Okay, so what is the type of joint? The type of joint at this is what we call as the hinge joint. Okay, ada yang membuat synovial joint. Okay, for some of you who put synovial joint, I cannot accept it because kalau sini pun synovial joint juga. Okay, kalau arah tempat-tempat lain mostly is synovial joints also. Kalau arah hips pun synovial joint juga. So synovial joint is very general. Ani it's very specific. Ia cakap arah the elbow. So this is the type of jointnya. Kami panggil hinge joint. Ada lagi yang pintar menjawab sini the type of joint ia buat elbow joint. Well, hello. Okay, you are year 11. You are not primary 6. Okay, so the type of jointnya I have ajar you guys the different types of joints. So if you give me elbow joint, okay, then shame on you. Okay, so it's macam indah pedah kamu belajar nama-namanya tu. Okay, now part 2, state the type of action that this joint allows. So apa ia punya action yang hinge joint ini allows. So if you do your arms, okay, so when you do your arms, so you can straighten, you can bend. Okay, so that's the type of actions that only allows. So your answer should be straighten atau straightening, and mesti dua-dua, and bending. Okay, so if you answer straightening or extending and bending, or if your answer is also extend and flexion, is also acceptable, tapi masih dua-dua, bukannya satu saja. Okay, ada lagi yang membuat, I don't know who was it, apa yang buat supination, pronation? No. Okay, you can't do pronation with your elbow joint. Okay, ada lagi also acceptable movement in one plane. Okay, if you say movement in plane, it means they can move in any other plane. Okay, so which means it can go terlepas, termasuk, or it can go up and down, or you can extend or bend. Which one? Okay, so it must be movement in one plane. Okay, right. Now, name the structures that attach muscles to bones. So structures that attach muscles to bones. Okay, so this one, again, I cannot help you if you don't know this. This is just remembering, knowing stuff. Okay, it's not understanding, it's just remembering. What is the thing, what is this feature that connects muscles and bones? So this one here, this is your muscle, this is your bone. You have this thing here. What is this called? This is kami panggil sebagai tendon. Okay, and state the tissue that make up these structures. So what are they made up of? Again, I cannot teach you how to remember. You need to remember this on your own. Okay, so tendon is made up of fibrous tissue. Okay, or if you actually put connective tissue. Okay, it's also acceptable. Okay, so next. this question. Okay, so I'm not going to zoom in further. You should have this in front of you as well. So here, okay, you have the table 4.1 and you have the graph as well. Okay, so right, so let's read the question first. It says a student investigated the perception of touch by different areas of the skin. The student recorded the minimum distance between two pins that were perceived by a blindfolded student as two separate points rather than one. The results are shown in table 4.1. Okay, so you actually have, okay, so I think most of the problem with you guys is you don't understand what the question is asking you. Okay, you don't understand what they are doing, you know, what they are actually trying to give the results to you. Okay, so that's why a lot of your answers is it doesn't match at all. Okay, or it doesn't make sense at all. Okay, so firstly, what you need to understand the question. It says the perception of touch by different areas of the skin. And what they do, they recorded the minimum distance between two pins that were perceived by blindfolded students as two separate points rather than one. So essentially, okay, essentially what they're having is they have two students, student one, student two. Okay, so student one, student two. Okay, and what do they do is they blindfold the student one ini. Tutup matanya. Sudah ia tutup matanya, and then student 2 ni, ia ambil dua pin. Satu pin, dua pin. Ia ambil dua pin, and dua pin ni, ia macam parallelkan. Okay, what did I do is they parallelkan, and these pins ni, ia akan ambil, ia cucuk ada different areas of the body, area of the skin. Di mana ni nah, different area. Thumb, back of arm, upper arm, tip of toe, upper surface, blah, 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 what so on and so forth. Okay, so they take the two pins and they actually measured, okay, kalau ia cucuk arah tangannya, let's say ia cucuk arah tangannya, ia akan terasa dua pin. Okay, so ia terasa dua pin, and then sudah kalau ia terasa dua pin, dihampirkannya pin sebutingan ini. So instead of cuma ni jaraknya, sini sama sini, now jaraknya cuma ni sama cuma ni. Okay, so cucuknya arah tangannya. Kalau arah tangannya, arah thumbnya terasa yang masih dua buting. Tapi let's say kalau arah kakinya, walaupun ada dua, ia terasa satu cucukkan saja. Okay, now sudahnya tu, ia kira tu berapa minimum distance, what is the minimum distance that the person can feel ada dua pins being bercucuk arah badannya. Okay, so this is the one that they recorded. Okay, so let's say you have this jarak, cucuknya arah tangan, terasa ya dua buting. And then this jarak, cucuknya arah tangan, terasa ya dua buting. And then this jarak, cucuknya arah tangan, terasa ya sebuting saja cucukkannya. So, ia akan ambil result mana satu, ia akan ambil result yang ini. What is the minimum distance they can feel two pins kena cucuk arah tangannya? This is what they are recording. Okay, awal-awal dua pin, jauh jaraknya, cucuknya masih terasa dua buting. Dua pin, ampirkan sikit, terasa dua buting. And then ampirkannya lagi, dua pin, cucuknya terasa sebuting saja. Macam satu saja, satu tempat kena cucuk. So, apa yang ia ambil? Ia ambil result yang sebelum ini, yang ini. Okay, the minimum distance. Okay, between two pins that were perceived by a blindfolded as two separate points rather than one. So this is the minimum. Okay, so now here, what can you conclude by comparing the result for the thumb with the result for the back of the hand? So what if you see here, kalau arah thumb, the minimum distance-nya is berapa tu? Arah thumb minimum distance is 3 mm. Tapi kalau arah back of the hand is 21 cm. Maksudnya kalau ia distance-nya 3 mm, ini arah thumb. Kalau arah thumb distance-nya 3 mm, they can feel as 2. Ia terasa 2. Tapi kalau anything lower, okay, so let's say ia 2 mm kah or 1 mm, then arah thumb itu, they will feel as 1 pin. Macam satu saja kena cucuk. Okay, this is what it's saying. Jarak 3 mm sahaja, iatah yang paling damit, ia terasa 2 pin. Kalau lagi damit dari 3 mm, let's say 2.9 kah, 2.8 kah, or 201, they will feel it as 1 pin sahaja, satu pin sahaja. Okay. Whereas kalau back of the hand, okay, if you look at the back of the hand, so the distance-nya is much greater. Okay, mesti 21 mm. 21 mm. Mesti jaraknya, or in other words, 2.1 cm. 2.1 cm, what will happen? Ini arah back of hand. 2.1 cm, feel as 1. Feel as 2. Kalau ia sikit saja, let's say 20 mm saja, 20 mm ataupun 2 cm, sudah dia feel as 1. Okay, so what you can see here is arah thumb-nya, kalau sikit jaraknya 3 mm, masih ia berfikir 2. Unless kalau ia 2 atau 1, dan baru tah ia terfikir 1 kena cucuk. Tapi kalau sini, back of the hand, ia jaraknya 2.1, masih ia terfikir 2. Tapi kalau 2 saja, 20 mm, sudah dia terfikir as 1. So in other words, you can immediately see between thumb and the back of the hand, you can immediately conclude that the thumb is actually much more sensitive compared to the back of your hand, simply because at smaller distance, even at small distance pun, they can still feel the pin as 2. So which means it's much more sensitive. Kalau ini sudah 20 mm, which means they already feel as 1. So this is less sensitive. So thumb is much more sensitive. Okay, so this is what you can conclude by comparing the results of the thumb with the result for the back of the hand. Right? So you can see the thumb-nya 3 mm feeling as 2. Tapi kalau anything lower, baru dia feel as 1. Tapi kalau our back of hand, 21 mm feeling as 2. Tapi 20 mm sudah feeling as 1. Artinya ini less sensitive. Okay, so back of hand is less sensitive. Ini more sensitive. Okay, so what can you conclude by comparing the results for the thumb and the results for the back of the hand? So what I can say is that the thumb is more sensitive to the 2 pins at closer or near distance as opposed to the back of the hand. Okay, so thumb is much more sensitive to the two pins. They can easily feel the two pins at much shorter distance as opposed to yang ani. The thumb, they can easily feel two pins at shorter distance, only 3 millimeter, sudah ya feeling as 2. And then kalau sini 2.21, they already feel as 2. Okay, kalau sini 20 already feel as 1. Ini sudahnya 2 baru ya feel as 1. Okay, so in other words, the thumb is much more sensitive. Thumb is more sensitive to the two pins at closer or near distance as opposed to the back of the hand. Okay, and why do we think this is? Then we can also conclude that it could be because the thumb has more receptor. Okay, more receptor for touch compared to back of hand. Okay, so kenapa ia sensitive? Because we know we would become sensitive if you have a lot of receptors. Okay, so in other words, the thumb should have more receptor compared to the back of the hand. Okay, so next question. All right. Yes. What can you conclude by comparing the results for the parts of the hand with the results for the parts of the foot? Okay, so same thing. Okay, tadi kami bezakan between thumb and the back. Now we want to bezakan between your hand and the foot, parts of the hand and parts of the foot. Okay, so it doesn't say it's the thumb ka, back hand ka, upper arms ka, whatsoever. It's just simply parts of the hands and parts of the foot. Okay, so in other words, it's the whole thing here. This is parts of the hand and this is parts of the foot. Okay, so if you want to if you want to be more specific, you can just look at the hand saja, back of hand kah, or upper surface of foot, because satu yang ia cakapkan hand and foot. Okay, but if I were you, I would look at overall. So if you see here, overall, kalau thumb is 3, back of hand is 21, upper arm is 45. Whereas kalau arah lower, arah foot is 7, upper surface of foot is 24, and thigh is 38. So generally, your hand has shorter distance compared to your foot. Okay, so the distance between the two pins is much shorter arah the hands, parts of the hands, as opposed to parts of the foot. Okay, so if you just focus on these two lah, this is parts of the hand, this is parts of the foot. Lepas 3-3. Right, because kalau upper arm sama thigh itu, maybe it's not part of your hand, if not it's part of your foot anyway. Okay, so you just focus on these two. 3 versus 7, ani menang, ani lagi sikit. 21 versus 24, ani lagi sikit. So we can assume that hand is actually much more sensitive compared to your foot. Okay, same thing. So what can you conclude? So hand is more sensitive to foot, to distance, to between suppose to foot. Okay, hand is more sensitive to smaller distance between two pins as opposed to foot. So tangan kami lagi sensitif arah distance yang damai daripada kami punya kaki. Okay, kenapa? Same reason, you can apply the same reason as well. Simply because the thumb has more receptor, or because the thumb is involved in manipulative work. It's much more involved in dexterity compared to your foot. Okay, hand okay? Because our hand is more involved in fine dexterity or manipulation. So we use our hand, a lot of people use their hands more to do a lot of stuff, okay? To typing, to reading, to eating, everything. We use our hand more than we use our foot, okay? And our hand is much more involved in fine manipulation. So macam menulis itu, lagi sanang menulis pakai tangan dari pakai kaki. Okay, so that's what it means. Okay, so it involved in fine dexterity. So therefore, if lagi it's involved in fine dexterity, fine manipulations, so it requires to be more sensitive as opposed to your foot. Okay, next is, oh, how many questions? It's a lot. Okay, right, this question shows a student involved in experiment on breathing. State 3 ways in which the air in the jar, in the hard jar, in the jar saja. State 3 ways in which the air in the jar will differ from atmospheric air. So here, you have the student is exhaling. The student is simply exhaling. It's, kan ya cakap breathing kan? The student is breathing out into here. So it's simply, the student is exhaling, breathing out. So when they breathe out, so which means the air that bubbles up the breath, it gets to the breathing out yang keluar itu, breath yang keluar itu akan masuk sini, and then it bubbles up and they will actually accumulate into the jar here. Okay, so which means the air here, okay, sorry, let me just wait, what's going on? Yeah. Wait for a second. Okay, I'll just wait for a while. Okay, here. Right, sorry for that. Okay. Okay, so where was it? Okay, here. So you have the student is breathing out. So when the student is breathing out, so of course the it will bubbles off into this jar. So the air collected here is actually the air. So the breathing out. Okay, so it's the breathing out air. So this actually comes from the student itself. Okay. Now, state 3 ways. Okay, hello. Wait, Okay, now it says state 3 ways in which the air in the jar, so which means the breathing out air, okay, will be different from the atmospheric air in the normal air. Okay, so this is just trying to compare differences between breathing out air, exhaled air, as opposed to normal air. So this one is just mau tiga saja. So it's very, very simple. Okay, so you just talk about, paling simple, you just talk about the compositionsnya. Okay, apa compositionsnya? If you breathe out, you will breathe out more of, so you would have a lot more of CO2. Okay, as opposed to normal air. Apalagi kalau breathing out, you would have a lot less O2 as opposed to normal air. Apalagi if you breathe out, kalau breathing out, mana ada dust kan? If you breathe out, you should have no dust particle, nada habok, right? No dust. So in other words, it's clean. Whereas kalau normal air, ia ada dust, ia ada, you know, all the mites or whatsoever. So it's not clean. Apalagi kalau breathing out, it's near near body temperature. Kalau normal air, it would be atmospheric temperature. Okay, so banyak differences. So the three airs in which the jar will have different from normal air, you talk about more CO2 in air jar versus atmospheric. More CO2, you have less O2, you would be cleaner. In other words, no dust particles. Okay, it would probably be near body temperature because it comes from the body. Okay, now what I have seen a lot of you answer is you say that exhale air, it has higher pressure. Okay, if you say higher pressure, no. Okay, they don't have higher pressure. Okay, kalau exhale air, the higher pressure is arah your lungs. It's not the air you breathe out. It's because there is high pressure in your lungs. It forces the air out. Bukannya the air out itu has higher pressure. Okay, so you can't say higher pressure. Okay, because higher pressure is in lungs, which forces air out. Okay, bukannya air out itu ada higher pressure. No, it's because higher pressure inside the lungs, which because of the changes that occurs in the lungs, that forces the air out into breathing out. So bukannya ani yang ada ani. No, it's ani yang menyebabkan ani. Okay, and also you say there is higher volume. Okay, higher volume lagi. No, it won't have higher volume as well. Okay, because when you give it off, the volume would be almost similar to the atmospheric volume. Okay, and ada lagi higher movement of particles there. Ada yang bercakap, okay, higher movement of particles. No, if higher movement of particles is to do with pressure, and that's to do with physics. Okay, we're not. Okay, I know you guys are probably very interested in physics. Okay, but do not confuse this type of answer. Jangan pikir-pikirkan jauh-jauh kan relate sampai ke physics apa tu the Brownian motions or whatsoever. You know, just simply what we have learned. Okay, related to bio, pasal carbon dioxide, apa tu pasal oxygen. Yes, I know we relate with pressure, which is to do with physics apa. Okay, but the payah detail sampai keteluan movement of particles, they collide with each other whatsoever, or so on and so forth. Yeah, okay, no need. If it's not necessary, if it's not mentioned before, that means jangan takut. Okay, so here next question, describe what happens in the student's thorax to cause air to be breathed up in the jar. Right, so this one, apa menjadi arah the student thorax? The student's punya thorax maksudnya ia punya upper body. In other words, ia punya rib cage to cause the air to be breathed out into the jar. Okay, this one, what are the changes that occurs when you breathing out? Okay, so this one I'm pretty sure kamu yang salah-salah itu kamu udah paham soalannya. Okay, kamu udah paham soalannya. It's simply asking macam mana boleh kamu breathing out? Apa terjadi arah your upper body, arah your ribs, arah your rib cage when you're breathing out? We know this. I've drilled you onto this. Okay, what are the changes? Then you should talk about the diaphragm. Okay, the diaphragm should be relaxing, which become dome shape. Okay, apa lagi? Then the external intercostal. The external intercostal muscle should relax, whereas the internal intercostal should contract. Okay, then apa menjadi lagi? Your ribs move upwards, move downwards and inwards. Okay, then apa jadi? Arah your pressure in lungs increase, and then apa lagi? The volume cavity will decrease. Okay, all these things, you know this stuff. Okay, so it's just you guys simply don't understand the question. Okay, next. Oh my god. Okay, now, so you have this photosynthesis. Okay, so you have two lines. You have this line here, which is quite obvious. Okay, and you have photosynthesis in okay, so this is the line for D, this is the line for C. Now, immediately,
it's 3 o'clock.
You look at the graph, you try to understand what's going on first. So you have light intensity, you have the uptake or loss of carbon dioxide from plants. So this is the, you can see this is the zero. Okay, this is the zero. Any light intensity lah. This is, you have uptake, which is a plus. You uptake CO2. So plus means uptake CO2, which is above zero. Below zero is loss CO2. Okay, now kalau ia uptake CO2, ia mengabsorb CO2. So absorbing CO2, which means prosesnya is photosynthesis, is more. Okay, so photosynthesis is occurring more. That's why they take more CO2. Whereas kalau they lost CO2, okay, if they lost CO2, it means that they respire more. Okay, because as you know, plants during daytime, they can do photosynthesis and respiration. Tapi kalau pagi banyak photosynthesis dari respiration. Okay, now kalau plus is photosynthesis more, kalau minus photosynthesis less, respiration is more. Kalau nya arah zero, it means, kalau zero, it means balance. Balance maksudnya photosynthesis equals respiration. Okay, the uptake of CO2 sama dengan the loss of CO2. That's why it's zero. It's balanced. Nada net movements-nya. Okay, so this is what I can understand from the graph. Okay, so you can see here the balance when it is equal. Kalau arah plan D, ia balance arah light intensity berapa tu? Maybe 200. Kalau arah photosynthesis C, ia balance arah 500. Okay, so that means equal amount of photosynthesis and respiration occurring at 500 for C and at 200 for D. Okay, so that's now Use figure 4.1 to find the light intensity at which the rate of respiration is equal to the rate of photosynthesis in plant C. Now, straight away, we know this. It's equal, balance, photosynthesis equal respiration. Arah 0, mana 1. Okay, you look arah for plant C. Where is plant C? You look arah sini. So this is it. Okay, lihat berapa? It's 500. Okay, so what's the light intensity? The light intensity is 500. Okay, 500 AU. Okay, now explain why carbon dioxide is lost from plant C at a light intensity below the value that you have stated in A1. So, ia tanya, kenapa carbon dioxide is lost at plant C below the value, below 500. So, if you see it, plant C, there's plant C. So, kalau yang ngam 500, they have equal photosynthesis and respiration. But if it's below, anything below 500, for plant C, then they start losing. They start losing here. Okay, it's loss. You see? So it's starting to loss. Kenapa ia loss? As we know, kalau loss is because respiration is more. Right? So that's what your answer should be here. Okay, it's to do with this. Why do they lose at light intensity below the value? Because below the value, that means photosynthesis, less photosynthesis kan? So below the value, photosynthesis less. Okay, so photosynthesis occurring less due to not enough light. So when photosynthesis occurs less, so as a result, respiration respiration occurs more. And this respiration, what do? They release CO2. So if they release CO2, that's why you lost. Okay, so this is the answer. Because below the value, photosynthesis is occurring less. Okay, you see, respiration is more kan? Kalau respiration is more, simply means photosynthesis is less. Okay, so that's why you should put below the value, photosynthesis occurring less and respiration occurring more. Respiration occurs more. And what do we know? Respiration releases CO2. So leading to the loss of CO2 from plants, from plant C. Okay. Next part. Using figure 4.1 suggests why plant species D is more likely than species C to grow on the ground in a wooded area such as tropical rainforest. Okay. So here, if you see plant D, you cakap more likely to grow, more likely than species plant C to grow in the ground of wooded area. Okay, so if you see here, plant C, kalau arah low, kalau arah plant C, they can only start to photosynthesize. Kalau plant C start to photosynthesis more if more than 500. Okay, if more than 500. Tapi kalau plant D start to photosynthesis more if kalau misalnya sini bila tu less than, so 100, 200, so 100, 200, more than 200 AU saja sudah ia start photosynthesis. Kalau ini mesti ia 500, kalau ini mesti ia 200, kalau D mesti 200 sudah ia photosynthesis, 200 light. Kalau plant C mesti 500 light baru tah ia photosynthesis. So in other words, plant D require less light. To do photosynthesis. Kalau plant C require more light. Okay, so based from here, plant D, kami lihat sudahnya plant D, kalau kami lihat plant D, kalau limpas 500, barutah ia photosynthesis kan, barutah ia plus, barutah ia photosynthesis. So they only start to photosynthesis if it's more than 500. Tapi kalau plant D, yang warna merah itu, they start to photosynthesis more than 200, which is much less than 500. So in other words, plant D require less light intensity to do photosynthesis, whereas plant C require more light intensity to do photosynthesis. Okay, and how is that on a wooded land? On a wooded land on the ground, because kalau on the ground on a wooded land, they have less light intensity. Okay, so kalau less light intensity, siapa yang survive more? This one lah, the one that require less light intensity, which is D. Okay, so your first point, you identify ground. So macam sini, tropical rainforest lah, ground of tropical rainforest has low light intensity. Okay, pasalnya ia on the ground and it's other shades. Okay, and from the graph, you can see that plant D less light intensity, bracket, apa tu, more than 200 AU to do photosynthesis, as opposed to plant C, which require more than 500 AU to do photosynthesis. Therefore, plant D better on ground than plant C. Okay, so one point require less light intensity as opposed to the units, apa tu, the values also that will give you 3 marks, not because of this. Okay, so it's actually very easy. This question: when leaves fall from plants, they are decomposed to return nutrients to the soil. Suggest why the rate of decomposition will be particularly high in tropical rainforest. Okay, so tropical rainforest contohnya macam hutan di Brunei. Okay, so as you know, kalau tropical rainforest hutan di Brunei, it is quite humid. Okay, it is also very hot. Okay, and it is also very damp. Okay, and also tropical rainforest has a lot of trees and animals. Therefore, a lot of a lot of organic litter. So maksudnya kalau leaf berguguran boleh menjadi apa tu, boleh decompose and then it will return to the soil. Animals droppings, animals dying, they decompose, then they return to the soil. Okay, macam mana boleh? Why is it good also? Because it's quite humid, it's hot, it's damp. All of this, okay, is the optimum condition for bacterial or microorganism or decomposes growth. Okay. Also, you can talk about the fact that kalau the fact that it's hot, so optimum for enzyme. Okay, optimum for bacterial or decomposes enzyme activity. To break down nutrients. Okay, so you have a lot of possible answers here. The fact that it's hot, humid, damp, it's all optimum for microorganism, and a lot of cheese, so therefore a lot of organic litter, and it's the fact that it's hot is also optimum for bacterial decomposes enzyme spoon activities. Okay, right, and the last question. Okay, so here. So this is about regulation of glucose. Okay, so regulation of glucose. So if you don't know this, if you have trouble with this, then I would advise you to go to your notes. I have provided you with the notes about this. Okay, ada yang saya bagi, ia punya going up, going down, you go back to that. Okay, now, so if you see here, normal concentration of glucose, it increases. Secretion of E, glucose converted to F, then it will decrease. And once it decreases, secretion of G, F converted to glucose, and it will increase. Okay, so here, when blood glucose concentration increase, they will actually secrete hormone. Okay, apa hormonnya? Insulin. Okay, and what do insulin do? They will convert glucose menjadi glycogen. Okay, and if they convert glycogen store, as a result, the normal blood glucose concentration will return. Okay, and if it falls below normal, so it will secrete G. So they will actually secrete another hormone, which is what we call as glucagon. Okay, which is in which the glycogen gets converted into glucose. First question, state the type of process occurring in the body that is shown by figure 6.1. So this is what we call as homeostasis. Ataupun negative feedback. Okay, so if you say blood glucose regulation, duh, okay, it's obviously, but it's talking about the process. Okay, so it's more to do with planning. Okay, either this homeostasis or negative feedback. Now, identify E, F, and G. So we have identified here. E is insulin. Okay, F is glycogen, and G is glucagon. right? And name the gland that secretes E and G. So your answer should be pancreas. Ataupun if your answer is islets of Langerhans. Okay. If your answer is pancreatic, okay, if your answer is pancreatic gland, then I would have to ignore that because kalau pancreatic gland, they also secrete enzymes. Okay, so in this case, I would ignore this. Okay, I'm not sure whether it's acceptable or not. Tapi when I saw the marking scheme, they don't seem to accept the pancreatic gland. So I'm not sure whether it's not accepted or it's actually accepted. Okay, but I want you guys to be quite strict. So if you pancreatic gland, I just put it as salah saja because usually we associate pancreatic gland as enzymes. Kalau secretion of hormone, we would say pancreas or islets of Langerhans. Okay. Or if you say the beta cells or alpha cells, then I would say beta cells or alpha cells of pancreas, then I would say yes. If you say these cells, no, because it's simply because it says gland. Okay. So, right. Okay, so I think that's it for now. Okay, so now it's up to you to revise on your own. Okay, as I mentioned earlier, it's useless kalau misalnya you do the test nanti with you help of your textbook, marking scheme or whatsoever. Okay, because I'm doing all of this, sepayah-payah buat semua ni, is because I really want to help you. Okay, so it's no use if I'm trying my best to help you, but you're not trying your best to help yourself. Okay, how do you help yourself? It's not by looking at marking scheme. You actually do it on your own, by your own, your own thinking. Okay, with your own effort. Bukannya dengan melihat-lihat. Okay, so hopefully by going through all the answers, you have a good idea of how to answer. Okay, bukannya ingatkan jawapannya ni. Okay, I'm not asking you to remember everything here, the one that I have discussed. Okay, because I'm pretty sure in your exam it will be new question as well, and it would be something probably macam hindi pernah kamu dengar. Okay, but I can assure you it will be related to what you have learned. Okay, so you just need to be able to think and link with what you have learned before. Okay, and identify apa keywordsnya, understand dia punya graphnya, understand dia punya diagramnya, apa prosesnya and everything. Okay, so I think I'll stop here. So my advice is revise well. Good luck for your next test. Okay, so see you. Bye.